Hi guys, welcome into my third episode of What to Play Over the Weekend Ranked, the series where I analyze the Gods Unchained meta, what are the best deck and what is most played, so let's jump right into it. Obviously we didn't add like big changes because there was no patch or no new set, so it is kinda the same, or at least not really, because as you can see we have Nature that now is positive win rate, and in the last episode it was literally the worst god, and instead now that is the worst one with really a bad win rate, and as we will see that has probably just one deck that is good and all the other archetypes instead are negative in win rate. Instead, if we can see the best god right now is Deception, even with a really good win rate, because essentially it has multiple decks that are really good, as we will check, that are like Mayday, Hydrash, and even the budget deck that I shared in my other video, 2 videos ago essentially. So instead, if we go check the popularity, as you can see, obviously War is always the first, but Magic actually is really popular. That's because they have a lot of different archetypes to utilize, like Coronet, Atlantean, and even cheap card or Magic, and so on. So, and even a random, like a lot of really good archetype. When instead Nature is the least played, because we'll check right now. Nature is not like the god of the people, as we can say, like as it was when I started, but instead is like a kinda Nature is a kinda whale god, because essentially it's just control, as we will check. At least the good one is control. Okay, let's go literally on the tier list. As you can see, guys, the best deck actually, like, is kind of funny, but it's literally Nature, and obviously it has not a lot of popularity, so it's kinda easier to go like on one side or on the other, but is literally the best deck, and with a really crazy win rate, followed by Atlantean, Mayday, and Aggro deck. This is literally the only deck, as you can see, that is good, and all the other are like bad. And then we have Wallet War and Card Magic and so on. No, so let's go literally jump into the deck, and as you can see, literally Nature is actually really bad. As you can see, Wild Nature, Food Chain, but the good deck, the best deck essentially is Nature, so it's both the worst and the best. It's kind of strange, but let's jump right literally into every god for see what are the deck that we can play in this meta, and even budget or even a bit more pricey. So let's start with your budget deck. That is actually the budget deck I made a video about, so I will not talk about this one. Just only thing I want to say is this is a $10 deck with a 60% win rate, like that is crazy, over 2,000 games. When I made the video literally like 2 days ago, it was 1,000, so probably I shared this deck, and I'm really happy because I'm having a lot of positive comment about this deck, and it's super nice for me when I see like people commenting like thank you for this deck because it's working and is super pricey. Really, guys, thank you to you when you say that. But yeah, this deck is really good. If you want to see how to play it, go check my video. It will be like somewhere there. But yeah, go check the video because this deck is really cheapy and it's really good. So let's jump into another instead Deception that I think is better. Like, it's not that I think, I'm sure this is literally the best Deception right now, together with Mayday, but I made already a video about Mayday. So this is Hydrash by Henchman, so Squid. As you can see, this guy has a crazy win rate on this deck, like 76% is literally crazy, but even like the overall win rate is crazy, 62%. So this deck is really good. Obviously is Hydrash, so if you don't know how to play, is literally Eden and Rush. Yeah, that's not a joke, that's literally how you play this deck. A thing I want to point out is, for example, Sneaky Bruiser, that is not in a lot of deck, but is actually really strong for the last push. And essentially how you play this deck is literally just play your creature, buff them, and keep them hidden with Orfeo God power, and just rush for their face. Another thing I want to say is like 2 important cards, for example, are Pietro, in my opinion, that you hide or your board essentially is really strong, and you want to keep that when you have like 1, 2, or even 3 creature already, so you can hide all of that. And another really important card is that is Cutthroat. This is super important to understand when you utilize Cutthroat. Versus Control is the best to utilize around 6, 6.5. Kind of depends even from the control you are against. For example, if you are versus Magic, you can probably utilize at around 4.5, 4, sorry, because probably they can have a Shaped Blast and so on. So obviously you have to adapt, but this is a really good card versus control, because you can remove their care or even their demo and so on, put at the bottom of their deck and rush them. Another card I want to point out is AGGRO, because it's really good, because essentially it's protected with 5 damage and you can continuously hide that. So yeah, that's kinda strong, to be honest. But yeah, this is probably, in my opinion, the best Deception deck right now. Let's go now in the best nature, so the best counter to the Hidden Rush is Control Nature. This deck, guys, as you can see, 70% win rate is pretty crazy. I wish I could give the perk to this guy, but it's literally triple question mark, so I can't. So it's almost $1,000, so it's not for everyone. I know that, but as I said, I will just cover deck for everyone, so budget, pricey, and so on. So how do you play this deck? Is literally a control, so you want to control the board. You have multiple healing, like really big healing, like double Winter's Bounty, double Compost Charm, so it's 20 healing plus 40 healing, so 60 healing, like that's crazy, without counting Demo and Emberoni, so this is literally crazy. So how do you play this deck is versus aggro. You want to dominate the board, you want essentially to clear the board, and the best way for do that is just one card, in my opinion. Actually 2 cards of this deck. The best way are Blood in the Water. This card is amazing versus all the deck that have a lot of stats like Olympian or actually any aggro, like you can just suck all their board one against each other, so it's really powerful, but you have to mana surge that, and it's pretty easy to mana surge every card in this deck with Vase Kaiser. And another important card is Drag Down versus aggro, because essentially you just clear all the little creatures that aggro have. So this is the way how you win versus aggro. But how do you win instead versus control? Versus control is pretty easy. You just win with Dearly Departed. So you just put Dearly Departed, Shine on Us on Dearly Departed, and so essentially you eat their win condition. So you are versus Arandion, you eat Arandion, you are versus Mayday, you eat Mayday, and so on. So it's pretty easy. Actually, I see now that they have not Vase Kaiser. That's kind of strange, to be honest, because I don't know now how you mana surge the cards. To be honest, a thing you could do probably is change Encumbered Looter with Vase Kaiser. At least that's what I would do. But I mean, this guy has a really good win rate, so you probably can just copy this list and mana surge those cards. I don't know how, but I mean, he's doing that. So, another card really good versus aggro is Blazing Talisman. Like, this card literally wrecks every aggro if they don't have Relic removal, so that's probably how he does that. Let's jump right into Magic. So Magic, it has, as I said, multiple archetype. I just wanted to cover the best, in my opinion, and it's not just in my opinion, it's literally on everyone's opinion, because this deck is crazy. Atlantean are really good, bro. See the win rate of GFA, really well done. 74% win rate, that's crazy, and even 62 over 1,000 games. That's even more crazy. Like, this deck is literally broken. Like, is super good. If you don't know how to play Atlantean, it's actually pretty easy. I mean, probably not the easiest aggro deck, but it's still an aggro pretty easy. Like, it's easier than Hidden Rush, in my opinion. You just go pretty wide with a lot of really good cards, like this card that is a 3-2 that draw, or Time Bomb, or this card that is a 3-3 with double ward, so on this one, and even on the other Atlantean, 4-3 with perma protected, so it has a lot of broken card. And then essentially, if you can, you want to stick with Francesca, Project Rise, a 15-15 with God Blitz going to their face. So yeah, that is kind of the way. So essentially just go super wide and then push into their face. Only thing that I want to point out essentially are Boost Walker, that is really a good card, and is essentially what makes this deck pricey with Francesca. So if you don't have the bugs, I would say you can play without Boost Walker, even if the deck get a lot worse, but you can't play without Francesca, in my opinion. And another thing I want to point out is this guy that is essentially a 5/7, because you have literally no spell. So it's a 5/7 for 5 mana, so really a big body and really hard to deal with. So this is actually really good, and you have only one though, because if not, you can break pretty easily. So let's go now instead. As I said, War, it has essentially only one version that is doing pretty well, and is aggro death. So this deck essentially doesn't even have a lot of games for say like this is good, like it's not 2000 games with 62, but it's 30 games with 65. To be honest, they had like multiple deck with positive win rate on this archetype, so it's probably a good archetype. I wouldn't suggest you to play this one if I have to be honest, but if you like that, it's probably the best one to play. So aggro death, what it is essentially is just face damage. Face damage, how do you do face damage? You have Bomb Fly that makes 3 damage, Brimstone, Dangerous Ritual, Scourge Scepter, and even most importantly, this card that is super important because you make 3 damage and in the meantime you even deal with the board, and is this one essentially the main point of the deck. You have even Canopy for utilize another time, essentially the afterlife of this card. This is literally how you play the deck. Then you have a bunch of cards for deal with the board like Bad Luck, Curse of Brigade, Perseverance that is broken, and so on. So this is essentially how this deck gets played. To be honest, I wouldn't run that, but it's pretty cheapy. At the same time, probably I would run one of the a lot of other budget deck that I bring it on my deck because they had a lot more games with even a better win rate. So yeah, I just don't see a point into playing this if not that you like that and you want to play that. But at that point, I probably just play the zombie I shared because, as I said, it had more games, so you have more stats. But this deck is pretty fun in my opinion. I like to play this card. So let's jump right into, instead, a not funny deck. The deck no one enjoy to play and no one enjoy to play against. Ill Light. So this is probably the best Light right now. I saw Light, as you can see guys, if we go back, it is not in a good spot, to be honest. It is not in a good spot. And actually it's 47 because we have this deck that is like 60% win rate Ill Light and so on. So because if not, it would have been even worse. But it's not funny, and your weekend ranked will take probably like 10 hours for do that. So I don't know if you like have nothing to do, you can run this deck. But so essentially, how do you play this deck? You literally just heal. Like you manage a bit the board, but not even a lot because you don't have a lot of things. So you have a bunch of order, but mostly you just heal, and you want to Blade of the Creator, so you can heal over 30. And you continue to order, you continue to not make them attacking you, and so on. Like, that's literally the point of the deck. Then the other things you want to do, if you can, is board block them with Purification Filter and Aegis. I don't know why this guy play only one Aegis, I would probably play 2. And so you board block them, continue to heal, you heal essentially. The main point of this deck is essentially to heal with Shimmering Spire, so heal essentially 30 2 times, so like 60, and reach enough health essentially for OTK your opponent with Prophet of Progress. That's kinda the point of the deck. So versus aggro, obviously it will be harder to heal so much, and instead you will most likely just board block them for win, when instead versus control that they don't place that much board, so you can't really board block them. You can literally just out heal your opponent and try to OTK, or even if you don't OTK, you can go for the infinite fatigue play. You play Mericadmos and jump back Mericadmos, so you never go into fatigue. To be honest, I wouldn't even play this deck. I'm sharing it because it's probably the best light deck, but I wouldn't suggest to you just because it's really long and is not funny, probably not for you and even for your opponent. So since we need more player, we don't want to get essentially people tilted. Let's go into the last deck instead, that is an Aggro War. Aggro War, I just bring this one. You can probably play any Aggro War. Like, I think Aggro War is in a pretty decent spot. I made a budget Aggro War video, but this one probably was the one with the highest win rate, so 66% is really good. As you can see, is kinda a really aggro and really even relic focused aggro war. As you can see, it has double sharpen, double sight, so it has a bunch of cards that you generally don't see. That's why I shared this deck, because just it's a bit different. So if you want to try, if not, you can try the budget version that I made with Zaskia. And essentially, how do you play this deck is literally an aggro war with just a bunch of weird cards, so a bunch of shadow card, hidden card, and so on, and you have double broad price because essentially you will trade a lot with those relic, and so you will get damage and you can draw, essentially. You have even retaliation for the same fact, and yeah, I have not a lot to say about this because it's just aggro war. So you go face, you make damage, and you win, probably, or you lose. Only thing, probably, another thing to say is that you have double out of its misery. The point is essentially to kill like an Camber Looter or the spawn or the little spawn of Madame or the little spawn of Bloodguard. So essentially all those little things. So you get the things buffed, and yeah, you have now big things. Like you can stick Soul Survivor and just go face. I don't know why would you ever play just one imp. There is literally no way you play one imp into any type of war. So you, for sure, if you want to play this, put 2 imp. Guys, this was the 3rd episode of What to Play Over the Weekend Ranked. I hope you liked it. And now, if you want, go check my budget deck about Deception, best budget Deception deck, or even the video about how to have less bug on mobile. And I guess see you to the next video.